My friends, we are fulfilling that prophecy of the daughter of Zion right now. All generations will call me blessed. Right over the Christian globe, at the close of day, in east and west, and actually even our Anglican brethren at evensong repeat the canticle of our Blessed Lady. And in the monastic world, quite often, such as on this day, it would be also very solemn, with incense covering the high altar. The maximum, chant ancient and majestic, the language of the centuries. Glory unto God. But on this particular day, that glory is shared in a particular way by the highest honour of our race. And we know that she has taken the place of you-know-who. Old Nick, by his very nature, was the most brilliant light bringer, Lucifer, and so he is jealous. Now I want to zoom into the question of what Our Lady actually does, can do, and will do if she is in the place that she's in. Right now, we are living a time of history with a larger number of Marian interventions than ever before. There's a reason for that. From where she is in glory, she is concerned as a good mother, and she can see the danger that we actually hold within our own hand of self-destruction, not only with regard to our soul, the primary issue, but also with regard to humanity itself. We can actually, even in a short space of time, it could happen, really, get into a situation where irresponsible leaders could, in a short time, massively destroy us. We know that had, for instance, Hitler had in his hand what he was trying to get, the secret arms, he probably would have used them. But the intelligence that was in Germany went eventually over to the States, and of course, they used it. Not far from this date, in 1945, I believe, or 46. It was the war in the Pacific afterwards, didn't it carry on, didn't it? But it happened, and it was actually, I believe, on this day. And of course, Our Lady is known to have intervened in the case of those in Nagasaki who had a special devotion to her. And we know also of the way that St. Maximilian Kolbe protected the foundation that they had there from happening by building it on the other side of the hill. He died, of course, on the vigil of this feast, and was somebody who was aware of her power. All the great saints of heaven have had this devotion, and we know something of what she can do. Shortly after ordination, I found myself in a chapel in the heart of Rome where I came across a surprise. I had been asked by a friend of mine to celebrate Holy Mass in that chapel for her intentions, and I did, but I discovered in doing so that there was a reason for her choice of it, as well as having the fact that she was nearby. It was full of history. As I prepared, I noticed that there was a plaque on the chapel wall. It's inside a larger church, but unchanged. It's a side chapel, where that Saint Maximilian Kolbe had celebrated his first Holy Mass, I think in about 1918. And the reason why he had chosen it was that Our Lady had done something there before. What it was that there was an anti-Catholic Jew who had some kind of friend who had nevertheless been concerned about the well-being of his soul and given him the miraculous medal. So he took it, skeptically, but then something happened, and he ceased instantly to be skeptical. he was in this chapel with that medal, and the Mother of God appeared before him in that very side chapel. And a grace was given to him. It was that without any catechetical formation, he was given infused knowledge that the truth was to be found in the Catholic Church, and he was given en bloc that knowledge. He and his brother, who was also converted, his own name was Alphonse, and they were the Ratisbonne brothers, eventually founded an order to work precisely for reconciliation with the Jews. But that has happened several times with the intervention of our Blessed Lady. About the same time, it happened in parallel in two very different places. It was after the war in 1947, and Our Lady intervened in the case, first of all, of a Negro who had no knowledge, not even able to write, and she appeared to him as a result also of his being given in prison, in death row, the miraculous medal by a lapsed Catholic who didn't want it anymore. Our Lady appeared to him at midnight and, he was an orphan, asked him if he would like her to be his mother. And he, of course, immediately accepted that proposition because she was beautiful and she was love in person. But it didn't stop there. She told him to get in contact with a Catholic, noticed, a Catholic priest. He was to ask for instruction. But actually that's not all. She gave him instruction. And when it came to the course of talks given by the prison chaplain, he was dumbfounded to find that he already knew things about the sacraments, about confession, about how it works, about the real presence. And when at one point he was puzzled, he, the Negro, his name was Claude, came out with this: "And Father, should you ever have a doubt about this," the fact that he had seen her, "I was told to tell you this. You made a vow in Holland during the war that if you got out of there, you would build a church in her honor, in honor of the Immaculate Conception. She is waiting for you to fulfill that promise." Oh. He had no doubt after that as to the reality of this apparition. And the church since was built. It's in America. But this particular case was quite dramatic because he was beaming when it came to wanting to go into that terrible instrument of death, the electric chair, in its most primitive form in 1947. But at the last minute, it was called off, and he wept. The sheriff came up the stairs. "Reprieve, reprieve!" They were trying to get clemency from the High Court. And he was in tears. It turned out that he was crying because he wanted to go to the Blessed Virgin and couldn't wait anymore. So the chaplain, that same chaplain, whispered in his ear, "Claude, why don't you offer this suffering for the conversion of that horrible criminal who hates you so much, Jim Hughes, the lapsed Catholic?" Yeah! So we took that on board and offered all the pain. Eventually, the time came when there was no more reprieve. The High Court did not accept clemency, and so to the electric chair he went. And the newspapers commented that never before had anyone been seen to go beaming with joy to the electric chair. A few weeks later, Jim was in that electric chair. They tried to get some kind of prayer out of him. The chaplain couldn't get anything, he just blasphemed. They tried the doctor, a of the prison. He started to blaspheme in a most horrible, demonic way, and even to spit at the doctor. He was carrying on with his curses when suddenly, "Ah! Get me a priest! Get me a priest!" The chaplain, the same, came to his ear while the others cleared away for a moment and heard his confession. He came back, and the sheriff asked the chaplain, "What made him change?" "I don't know, I didn't ask him." "Well, if you don't, I will. I won't sleep a night if I don't." So he went to his ear, the sheriff this time. "Brother, what made you change?" "You know that Negro I hated, Claude." "Yeah." "He's right there, at the back of the room, and behind him, with her arms on his shoulders, is the Blessed Virgin Mary. And he said to me, 'Jim, I obtained this grace for you, that at this moment you would see your place in hell. The Blessed Virgin obtained this grace for you because I offered my pain for your salvation.' I screamed because I have just seen my place in hell." And with that, the sheriff went away, and the current was applied. But with absolution on his soul, which right now, because of that, is not burning in hell, but is presumably in highest glory. Something similar was happening at exactly the same time in Rome. The name of this man, a fanatic Adventist, years earlier had left the Catholic faith. His name was Bruno Cornacchiola. He had a dagger with on it, "Death to the Pope!" and he meant business. He was going to assassinate Pius XII. He came to Rome and was about to give an anti-Catholic lecture against the Blessed Virgin Mary. He was at Tre Fontane, and he had 3 children, his own, with him, and he wanted to treat them to some chocolate. But the shop of the monastery, the Trappist monastery, was closed for the siesta, so he waited in patience for it to reopen and corrected his lecture notes and swatted them while his children played ball. He noticed that they weren't to be seen anymore after a while, so went looking for them. And he saw them in a grotto opposite the monastery. "What are you doing here?" They were all looking in one direction and saying, "Belladonna, Belladonna." "Get out of it, what are you doing there?" He tried to pull them away, but they were as heavy as lead and couldn't be shifted or moved. He went in further, and he saw her himself. And this is what she looked like. She has a book in her hand, and there's a reason for that. She gave him that same grace through her power of intercession from her divine Son, that he also would have a complete knowledge of the Catholic faith, infused knowledge, and also she herself, in a long apparition, taught him. And for the rest of his life he remembered word for word all that she had said. And in it was this interesting part of it, which is explicit. The Catholic Church, that he was fighting against, of course, was the true church. That his vicar on earth, that he was about to assassinate, was the Pope, vicar of her son. He was to find his way to that Pope and indicate what had happened. She also gave him a teaching explicitly on the Assumption. Eventually, through priestly contacts, he found his way to an audience with Pius XII. And at the end, if anyone wants to greet the Holy Father, now is your time. And so he got up, went up to the Holy Father and presented the dagger with Morte al Papa chiseled on it, and explained, this, Your Holiness, was destined for you. Pius XII was not unduly surprised. Do you know why? About a year previously, he'd had a message from Mystic Soul saying there's going to be an assassination attempt on your life, but our Blessed Lady is going to intervene. Does that sound slightly familiar, by the way? May the 13th, 1978, wasn't it? Or 79? Well, no, it was 81, wasn't it? It was after he became Pope in 78, that's right. And by the way, do you know what he said when he came to in the Gemelli Hospital with John Paul II? The first thing he said was, as he started to speak again, "Get me," and the name of the man came out. It was a holy bishop who had tried to warn him, there's going to be an assassination attempt on your life, and he wouldn't listen. Anyway, that's another story. With regard to this message coming from our Blessed Lady, notice the timeline. Notice that she had insisted on the Assumption. It's, I believe, the 1st of November 1950 that Pius XII had the courage to make this proclamation. Similar to what had done Blessed Pius IX much earlier, even before the First Vatican Council, which put in print what were the limits of his power. And so we have our Blessed Lady officially in the West declared with all her privileges. One flows from the other. It is logical that if she's immaculately conceived, if the chain of original sin is broken there, the consequences will not follow. Purification of the body results from sin, the curse. I conclude, my friends, she's more around than we think. She's closer to us than we think. It's not that far away from here, where I had been a novice and a junior actually at Kindercroft, and we used to have all-night vigils. Hundreds would come from all over Ireland, and things would happen sometimes. I was behind the statue. They were carrying the statue of Our Lady of Fatima at midnight down to the grotto, and I could see that they couldn't hold it. It was wobbling. It happened more than once. Michael Casting looked back. "Do you find this yoke going to be heavy?" "Yeah, what's wrong?" They couldn't control it. Eventually, at dawn, I heard what had happened. A child, notice, a child had seen what we adults didn't see. At the point, 2 points, I think, where that happened, our Blessed Lady was standing on the thing that held her, from a stretcher affair. Now that is logical. It can happen that if her body is glorified, it can actually therefore have a weight. Interesting. But what is above all interesting is that it happened in the context of prayer and reparation, of intense warmth and devotion to our Blessed Mother, from the ordinary people of Ireland. Never forget the simple message that she gave us at Fatima. The one thing she repeated each time. That meant she wanted it. Each day, 5 decades of the Rosary. But say it well. And remember that at Garabandal, she showed us how to pray it. It's recorded on tape, the speed that they had it. Slowly and thoughtfully. We don't insult our Blessed Lady even more by a high-speed rosary that we don't really pray. Let us enjoy the presence of our Blessed Mother.